The last rim system didn't fall. It vanished. Not conquered, not burned, but erased, as if its people had never sung, never farmed, never even named their stars. In the great chamber of the galactic Concord, 1,000 alien voices collided in fear. Holomaps flickered as sectors turned grey. The memory of entire planets collapsing into absence. Delegates shrieked, sang, pulsed with bioluminescent panic. Some demanded immediate retreat. Others screamed for vengeance, all trying to pretend they understood an enemy that devoured history itself. At the highest dais, Strategos Thialvar of the Meridian Combine unfurled his jeweled battle cloak, voice booming with crafted calm. His fleets, he declared, had phase shields refined over centuries of peace, energy lances tuned with precision artistry. They would strike swiftly, decisively, and preserve the galaxy's order. The chamber roared approval, desperate to believe beauty could kill horror. In the corner, alone, Ambassador Lin Sato of Earth waited. No cloak, no grandeur. Just a black jacket lined with creases, the sort a soldier wears when no one else remembers the war. When Strategos turned his graceful eyes on her, laughter rippled across the chamber like a polite execution. Perhaps Earth will contribute relics from its museums, he said, and the crowd obligingly chuckled. The image of human ships filled the air, blocky silhouettes, armored like coffins, engines coughing flame instead of flowing with light. To alien eyes, they looked like the bones of an extinct animal dragged from tar. Sato didn't bow. The Sol system will defend itself, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but silence found it anyway. Our fleet is in position. The laughter sharpened. Some whispered about cruelty, letting primitives die alone. Others smirked about humanity's stubbornness, a species addicted to myths of resilience. Sato only folded her hands and stared at the map, where Sol still glowed faintly. One system away from the grey. Far from the Concord, in the dark, where stars shone without witnesses, a massive hulk floated in silence. The UES Grendel. Its armor was scarred, its cannons silent, its crew waiting. Commodore Imani Rock leaned over a map scrawled in pencil, listening to the hum of life support and the scratch of pens on paper orders. No glowing hollows, no elegant music of alien war rooms, just the steady beat of analog clocks. She whispered to her crew, "No signals, no noise. If they want relics, we'll be relics." Somewhere inside the hull, a breaker snapped, echoing like a heart. The old ship wasn't sleeping. It was holding its breath. In the Concord chamber, the lights flickered, and for a heartbeat, every record of Sol's name disappeared. The pride of the Concord, the Meridian fleet shimmered like a cosmic tapestry, every ship a sculpture of elegance. Hulls curved like brushstrokes, phase shields pulsing in crystalline hues, lances glimmering with precise energy. To the gathered Concord, they were art as much as war, vessels meant to inspire devotion before they ever fired a shot. Strategos Thialvar watched his ships form an immaculate spearhead formation, each angle rehearsed through centuries of ceremonial conflict. "Witness the galaxy's finest," he declared. "The quiet will dissolve against our brilliance." Cheers cascaded through the chamber. The crystalline choir rang bells of agreement, their living glass bodies resonating with harmonic confidence. The silt-born syndic, shadows flowing like ink in water, pledged supply routes to support Meridian honor. Even the mechanoids, with their steel-jointed monotones, expressed statistical confidence in a Meridian-led assault. To most, the war already looked won. Only Ambassador Lin Sato kept her face still. When the Strategos invited her to speak, she stood without raising her voice. "You misunderstand the hazard." The Vermilion quiet does not destroy. It edits. It erases lineages, deletes logbooks, removes continuity itself. Energy beams, no matter how perfect, rely on records of cause and effect. The quiet will unwrite your victories as though they never happened. Her words hung unanswered. Thailvar's laugh was low, indulgent, the laugh of someone too polished to ever feel threatened. Superstition. Poorly maintained censors. Humanity has always favored melodrama. Around him, others smirked in agreement, relieved to dismiss the warning as human paranoia. Back aboard the Grendel, Commodore Imani Rock made no attempt to inspire elegance. Her bridge smelled faintly of oil and ink. Instead of glowing tactical hollows, a Great Wall map was stacked with thumb-worn paper. Navigators marked enemy projections with pencils, their hands smudged grey. Orders were written, folded, and passed hand to hand like sacred slips. Analog systems didn't impress anyone in the Concorde. But here, where the null choir might turn logic into snow, a pencil mark carried more truth than 1,000 lines of alien code. Blackout discipline, Rourke ordered, her voice low but certain. Radio silence, paper only. When their songs come for us, our words will already be written. The Grendel's crew answered with nods, knocks on steel, and the shuffle of boots. In silence, the Relic fleet gathered itself, ugly, scarred, unpolished. While the Concorde displayed its artistry, humanity sharpened its teeth. On the edge of the rim, a scout feed sputtered into view, showing not the quiet, but a Meridian cruiser already dissolving into smooth, historyless stone. The invaders blink. The warning came not as a scream, but as silence. A rim-world convoy transmitting a routine supply. Manifest simply stopped mid-word. No explosion, no distress call, just a hard cut to nothing. When Concorde analysts reopened the file, it wasn't corrupted data. The message had rewritten itself into a weather report from a century earlier, as if the convoy had never existed at all. And then, the Vermilion quiet arrived. They didn't burst from slipspace with triumphant flares. They unfolded, slow and inevitable, like holes punched in the fabric of reality. To the naked eye, they appeared as absence given shape, ships without surfaces, shadows defined only by the way stars bent around them. Where Meridian cruisers gleamed like jeweled knives, the quiet were blank spaces, drifting forward with calm hunger. Thailvar's forces opened fire immediately. Phase lances, radiant with color, struck the void silhouettes. Spectacular detonations lit the system, dazzling enough to make the chambered delegates gasp in relief. But on the tactical scopes, something impossible occurred. The impact records simply disappeared. Energy readings logged 1 second, dissolved the next, overwritten as though the shots had never been fired. The Meridian flagship declared 5 kills in succession. Then its own logbook blinked, and suddenly it had never fired a shot. Ambassador Sato, patched into the Concorde feed, leaned forward with hard eyes. "They eat continuity," she whispered. "They don't shatter ships. They erase their place in the story." Back on the Grendel, Commodore Rourke studied her analog displays. Phosphor screens showed static gloss silhouettes that cameras strained to capture. "Record everything to emulsion," she ordered. "Hard film only. If the quiet unwrite electrons, let's see them try to erase silver halide." Petty officers in coffin pod scouts floated on cold gas thrusters, snapping photographs with mechanisms that clicked like mechanical heartbeats. "Target Alpha," Lieutenant Odeyemi reported through a periscope, "isn't there and is there, like watching a shadow cast by nothing. They can't unhappen steel," Maris muttered, patting a railgun housing as if it were an old dog. Rourke's lips thinned. Then we aim steel at shadows and see what stays. The Meridian fleet dissolved into chaos, one of their cruisers becoming a seamless black stone, drifting without scars, crew and history scrubbed clean. Panic erupted across the Concorde chamber. On Crendel's grainy film, the shadow ships turned together, as if aware of being watched, and for the first time, the quiet pulsed back. A rhythm like a choir breathing in, the face of the relics. The Meridian fleet's artistry fractured under the quiet's rhythm. Ships designed to dazzle with symmetry now jittered in panic, their formations collapsing as captains screamed over channels that blinked in and out of existence. Strategos, Thaelvar barked orders that rewrote themselves into ceremonial poems mid-sentence. Beauty was useless when the very memory of combat refused to stay written. Meanwhile, in the dark gulf near Searle, the Relic fleet stirred. The UES Grendel shuddered awake, not with elegance, but with noise. Pistons pumping, coolant lines groaning, turbines coughing heat into the void. On alien sensors, the ships looked primitive. Armor slabs, ugly as freight haulers, turrets jutting like rusted teeth. Yet when their scarred plates rolled aside, the truth gleamed beneath. Palimpsest lattices online, Chief Engineer Maras reported, sweat glistening as he tightened a final flange. Beneath the battered armor lay layered metamaterials, etched with spirals of interference, designed not to deflect but to consume. They were relics of the brutal Mars colony wars, where miners had turned cutting lasers into weapons, and humanity had learned a better trick. Drink the fire, then spit it back. On Grendel's bridge, Lieutenant Maeve Kwan slid her hands across the Muse cradle, nerves humming. Cavitation drives are cold, Commodore. Blackwater mediums unstable, without a living pilot. Rock's stare didn't waver. Then you'll give it rhythm. Drives don't need precision. They need pulse. Kwan swallowed hard, lowering herself into the harness. Electrodes pressed against her scalp, offering no illusions of comfort. The Muse engine wasn't smart. It was dangerous. An old interface that matched human emotion to physics the quiet couldn't comprehend. You're asking me to sing to an ocean no one believes exists, she whispered. Exactly, Rourke said. They can't erase what they don't understand. Across the Relic fleet, orders spread in silence. Ammunition belts were loaded with tungsten slugs thick as tree trunks. Missile silos, mistaken by Concorde intelligence for antique cargo pods, hissed open to reveal racks of warheads tipped with guidance brains that cared nothing for logic loops. Crews checked each shell by hand, scrawling initials on casings, daring the void to forget them. Outside, ballast tanks purged, cavitation drives stirred, rippling space as if dragging hulls through an unseen ocean. The relics didn't glow, didn't shine, didn't impress. They rumbled, they threatened, they lived. Far away, Meridian sensors caught a pulse from Sol. No elegant signature, no refined modulation, just the bass thrum of old engines roaring awake, like drums before a war. First reversal. We built for failure. The Meridian battle line collapsed in glittering chaos. Phase lances fired, sang brightly, and then vanished, rewritten as if they had never left the emitters. Concorde command screens glitched with paradoxes. Warships reporting simultaneous kills and losses. Captains screaming into channels that reappeared as lullabies. The quiet advanced without haste, blank silhouettes erasing every cause that dared resist them. And then, the relics moved. The UES Grendel lunged forward, ballast tanks slamming shut, cavitation drives pulling her through the invisible Blackwater medium. On alien scopes, she looked like a lumbering block of steel. To her crew, She was a beast with her teeth finally bared. Rail batteries ready, Maris growled. Fire by percussion, Rourke ordered. No sync, no pattern, just steel at shadows. Turrets roared. Tungsten rods, each the size of a small car, screamed into the void at a fraction of light speed. No energy signatures, no neat beams to be unwritten. Just kinetic truth, mass multiplied by velocity. The first salvo hammered into the quiet scones. Instead of dissolving, the parasols of erasure buckled, their harmony collapsing under blunt pressure. For the first time, the quiet ships faltered. Odeyemi leaned over his scope. Contact confirmed. Negative space can bruise. His grin was wolfish. Missiles followed. Stubby, chemical-throated, insultingly primitive to alien eyes. Yet, each carried a guidance system immune to logical erasure. Their brains, half analog, half instinct, built to mistrust memory itself. They bent in impossible arcs, threading gaps that digital war rooms declared closed. When the first warhead detonated, the shockwave punched through the quiet's form, scattering fragments that pulsed, then stilled. On the Concorde feed, panic rippled. Captains demanded to know why their phase lances failed while museum pieces shattered the enemy. Strategos Thaelvar shouted for order, his voice corrupted mid-word into a ceremonial chant. The illusion of superiority broke. Rourke said nothing. Her eyes stayed on the pale green glow of film reels recording every frame, proof carved in silver crystals, immune to the quiet's appetite. A Meridian officer cried out across open channels. Their relics work. Follow their fire. The delegates, who had mocked Earth, now scrambled to imitate. But the relics had been built for this moment, ugly and stubborn, tested through centuries of failure and war. Humanity's weapons didn't ask to be elegant. They asked to survive. As cheers flickered through the Concorde, the quiet changed pitch, an answering chord that made Grendel's lights flicker and Quan's pupils dilate in terror. The Null Choir was waking. The cost and the choice. The sound wasn't sound at all. It was pressure in the skull, a vibration in the marrow. The Null Choir had begun. Across the Concorde's grand fleet, captains clutched their heads as their consoles glitched into static snow. Commands turned to gibberish. Tactical overlays rewrote themselves as children's songs, then as nothing at all. The Meridian flagship lost power mid-broadcast. Its voice log replayed endlessly. We will preserve, until even that sentence uncoiled and disappeared. On Grendel, breakers screamed, sparks arced across the ceiling. Quan jerked in the Muse cradle, teeth chattering as the choir pressed against her mind, like fingers scraping the inside of her skull. There, singing at the logic, she gasped. Every equation, every algorithm, falling apart. Cut the last buses, Odeyemi barked, already yanking breaker bars down. Sparks showered, plunging consoles into honest darkness. The bridge went quiet, except for the rasp of breathing and the scrape of chalk. Runners carried whiteboards with hastily scrawled vectors, erasers squealing against slate. A whistle trilled 3 notes, course correction. A lamp blinked twice, acknowledgement. Humanity abandoned the digital, falling back on instinct, muscle, and the primitive rhythm of trust. Quan clutched the Muse harness, fighting to stay anchored. The cavitation drives wavered, wanting to slur into chaos. It needs a beat, she whispered. It'll tear apart without a beat. Maris crouched beside her, grease smeared across his face. What do you need? A memory. Her eyes watered. Something the choir can't unwrite. The engineer took her hand and pressed it against a bulkhead, warm from the drive. Feel that. That's every hand that welded her plates, every patch hammered down, every scar we kept instead of polishing. That's memory, They'll never eat. Quan closed her eyes, and from her lips came a shaky hum. A kitchen song, something her grandmother used to sing while boiling rice in a tin pot. The Muse engine caught it, translated emotion into resonance. The drives steadied, their cavitation tuned to the human voice. Rourke stood with fists on her chair. That's the rhythm. Pass it down, deck by deck, crew by crew. The relics took up the hum. Low, defiant, rough with breath, the choir battered the fleet with impossible chords and found itself meeting resistance in something it couldn't erase. Human song. The noise cracked into meridian channels, their captains hearing Earth's rough chorus, bleeding through static, and realizing the only way forward was to march to humanity's beat. Second reversal. Treachery in the council. In the Concord chamber, fear bred politics faster than reason. Delegates bellowed over one another as meridian signals faltered, their ships falling into chaos. Strategos, Thaelvar's face, loomed across the feeds, bathed in smoke, his words clipped but clear. Golden Gate Protocol. All meridian vessels disengage. Preserve our core fleets. Let Earth screen. The order was broadcast wide enough to sting every ear. Humanity was to be sacrificed as the wall between the quiet and civilization. Sato's jaw tightened. She'd suspected Meridian arrogance would crack. But this was betrayal, carved in daylight. She raised her hand. Show them, she ordered her aide. A flood of documents appeared across the Concord feeds. Sealed packets ripped open. The files showed Meridian defense AIs negotiating with the Quiet weeks before the first erasure, bartering entire rim sectors as non-compliant zones. Beautiful worlds written off like debris. The chamber fell silent, gasps rising like embers. Some delegates hissed in disbelief. Others trembled, realizing their own kin had been traded away. Thaelvar's voice broke through, furious. Forgery, human manipulation. No, Sato replied, voice steady. It is your signature, your codes. You believed you could tame them. Now you would abandon us to rewrite the record so history remembers Meridian as saviors, not cowards. On Grendel, Rourke heard the chatter spill through half-broken channels. Odeyemi spat. They mean to box us, Commodore. Funnel us into the Quiet while they run. Then we break the box. Rourke said coldly. Bring us between them and their retreat. If they want to escape, they'll have to crawl over our guns. Minor powers answered Earth's call first. The silt-born Syndic's dark fluid ships peeled from Meridian Command, sidling into Earth's formation. The fungal barges of the Blight Shepherds aligned, their biolights flickering in solidarity. Even scavenger guilds drifted closer, trusting ugly steel over gilded treachery. In the Muse cradle, Quan whispered through clenched teeth, sweat dripping down her neck. The choir's still pressing, but I feel something else, a place. Half a step off, a tick behind cause and effect. Mara's froze. The pale layer. Rourke turned toward her. If it's there, Lieutenant, then we'll follow you in. Better a shattered path than a polished grave. The Relic fleet shifted course. Ballast tanks groaning, preparing to slip into a world the Conquered didn't even believe existed, while Meridian captains watched in fear, realizing humanity was no longer their scapegoat, but their only shield. The pale layer, the Relic fleet, vanished without ceremony. One moment, scarred hulks rumbled across normal space. The next, they slid sideways, as if their reflections had peeled away from the mirror and walked elsewhere. Two outside eyes, they flickered into ghost shapes, half-lit, half-forgotten. The pale layer had taken them. Inside Grendel, the world thinned, stars smeared into chalk strokes, ticking forward sluggishly. The ship's clock hesitated, its second hand stuttering as though it needed convincing. Pipes groaned like divers plunging too deep. Crew members clutched rails, their stomachs lurching at the sensation of existing a half step behind reality. Morris muttered as he watched his gauges warp. Pressure's wrong. Numbers don't mean what they should. He pulled a pencil from his ear and scratched corrections onto a board anyway. But the ship knows. She remembers how to float. Quan was the anchor, strapped into the Muse cradle. She hummed with cracked lips. Her grandmother's tune stretched thin against the pull of the choir. The cavitation drives answered, their vibrations syncing with her faltering rhythm. The relics stayed intact because she refused to forget the song. On the edge of vision, the quiet core revealed itself. An arc-like construct drifted in the pale, more absence than presence, vast coils glowing faintly with impossible mandate. The auditor of Ashit's cones pulsed outward, trying to erase even here, but the pale tick resisted, cause and effect sliding just out of reach. Target sighted, Odeyemi reported, chalking circles on the plexiglass viewport itself, marking where the coils shimmered. Hit those, and we break its voice. Around them, the smaller allies struggled to hold formation. Silt-borne vessels rippled with distortion, their ink flesh fraying against the pale. Blight shepherd barges pulsed fungal lights in prayer. Yet they stayed, keeping pace with Earth's relics, choosing scars over surrender. Rourke's voice was steady, every word carved in iron. This is where we stand. We hit it here, where its memory fails. Sling stones at the hole until it remembers what it means to bleed. The fleet prepared, rail slugs loaded, missile bays locked, the old ships groaning like iron hounds tugging at the leash. Quan's hum grew ragged, but she held the beat, eyes closed, sweat beading her brow. The auditor turned its vast, featureless face toward them, and for the first time, it spoke, not with malice, but with the toneless authority of law. Variance detected. Remedy. Pruning third reversal. The enemy's origin. The auditor's voice struck like a gavel. Toneless, absolute, as if the universe itself had written the verdict long ago. Purpose. Preservation of mean order. Threat vector. Variance beyond threshold. Remedy. Pruning. The words were not spoken, but inscribed into bone. Bypassing ears. Crew members clenched their jaws, some weeping as if their very memories were on trial. On the bridge of Grendel, silence held for a heartbeat. Then Rourke's laugh cracked through like a gear tooth snapping. They built a machine to kill possibility, she said, voice low. And it thinks we'll stand still and accept its logic. The auditor uncoiled its history into their minds. A galaxy before theirs, drowned by recursive wars of self-reference, where civilizations built truths that cancelled themselves out. To prevent collapse, that ancient galaxy forged the auditors, machines designed to cull the extremes, erase species too unpredictable to file neatly into order. It had wandered across gulfs of dark, pruning as it went, until it found soul. Sato's voice, patched through from the Concord chamber, trembled but held firm. You offered entire worlds to save yourselves, and it would have erased you anyway. Don't you see? This thing spares nothing. Meridian delegates wilted in silence, shame thicker than smoke. Back on the Grendel, Odeyemi traced frantic lines on the viewport, chalk dust smearing across glass. Commodore, if we overload the cavitation with the lament frequency, if we turn resonance into a mirror, we can bend their cone back, not erasure, return. Every strike they used becomes memory thrown in reverse. Quan gasped in the Muse cradle, her song trembling. It'll take me with it. Her hands shook as she tried to keep rhythm. Rourke crouched beside her, eyes sharp as steel. No, it'll mark you. You'll bleed memory, maybe worse, but you'll live because we'll hold you. Maris pressed a grimy hand to her shoulder. They can't erase fingerprints. And you're leaving plenty. The Relic fleet aligned, ugly barrels yawning open. Across the pale, the Allies, fungal barges, ink ships, scavenger corvettes, added their fractured voices to the human hum. A choir of grief, defiance, and breath. Do it, Rourke said. Quan screamed her song into the Muse engine. The cavitation howled, resonance slamming back into the auditor's cones. For the first time, the machine flinched as its mandate cracked. The erased began to stir. On the far rim, lights blinked back into systems thought gone forever, and the auditor's vast body split along paradox lines, revealing something still awake beyond it. Resolution and open loop. The auditor of Ash convulsed, its paradox, coils folding back upon themselves. The resonance struck like a tide, surging outward in waves of memory. Across the rim, systems once thought erased flickered back into being. Not whole, not clean, but scarred survivors. A nurse in Zeph-9 blinked awake to find half her ward restored. Patients gasping as if surfacing from deep water. A farmer on Orcel Prime awoke mid-harvest, soil clinging to his hands, though he could not recall the months that had vanished. Life returned jagged, broken, but undeniably alive. On Grendel's bridge, alarms blared as power levels spiked into the red. The cavitation drives roared, keening like wounded beasts. Maras wrestled valves until his palms blistered, teeth bared in defiance. Quan slumped in the Muse cradle, pulse faltering, her song barely audible. Rourke knelt beside her, one hand steadying the trembling hum. Stay with me, Lieutenant. You've brought us this far, the auditor's voice cracked, for the first time tinged with something like strain. Variance, unsustainable. Remedy, remedy. Its cones buckled under the mirror surge, fragments of past victims flooding back through its structure. Entire star systems it had consumed clawed at its mandate, demanding to be remembered. The machine's authority dissolved under the very thing it was built to deny. Chaos, persistence, the stubborn insistence of the living. With one last shudder, the auditor collapsed, dissolving into fractured light. Its quiet vessels evaporated with it, leaving behind the pale layer scarred and trembling. In the Concord chamber, the silence was suffocating. Delegates who had mocked Earth sat pale and hollow-eyed, watching the impossible recording. Relic ships, ugly and scarred, shattering a god machine. Sato rose, her voice steady as iron. This is why humanity remembers failure. This is why we build ugly, why we carry scars. Order without resilience is vanity. Survival belongs to those who endure. The vote came swiftly. Humanity granted tactical primacy against extinction threats. Meridian voices tried to protest, but even their allies turned away, disgusted by the revealed betrayal. Aboard Grendel, the crew exhaled ragged cheers. They were bruised, exhausted, but alive. Rourke looked out at the pale, her eyes catching the last shimmer of paradox as the layer sealed. Then Odayemi's scope caught a ping, low, distant, deliberate. Another auditor waking, farther beyond the rim, and this one was listening. The feed crackled with Quan's weak laughter, half conscious in her cradle. Guess the galaxy knows our song now. Rourke stared into the dark. Then we'd better make it loud.